It's good afternoon, right? Good afternoon. Welcome to SAAG. Am I too quiet? Oh. Hold on. There we go. That's better, right? Okay. So welcome to welcome to SAAG. We're going to go ahead and get started. That'll give you more time to talk about the stuff at the end. All right. So this is the note well. Hopefully you've seen the note well so far this week. Note it well. And this is the code of conduct, and just be respectful to people, I think is probably the answer to this. Meeting tips, you should have seen this too. Keep your laptops muted. It's fine. My meetings go quick. Agenda. Anybody interested in agenda bashing? Yay. Okay, so changes in the security area group since IETF 119. We had one BOF this time. That's the Network Attestation for Secure Routing BOF, NASR. That was today. They have an email list and a data tracker page, and you can look up what they're doing. We have a new working group chartered called SPICE. Yay. We rechartered 2 working groups, OpenPGP and EMU, and currently MLS and Lake are in the process of rechartering. The SPICE chairs are the only chair changes we had, and that's Heather Flanagan and Martin Thompson. Thank you very much for your work. If you're interested in becoming a working group chair, you should tell us. You can also become a document shepherd. It's reasonably easy to do. Learn about IETF processes while you're helping to move documents along. Also, errata processing. We are always sort of buried in errata. So you can help us out by looking at it, determining whether it should be verified or whatnot, and letting us know. And then attending BOFs. I mean, I think we're done with BOFs this time, though. Yeah, it's a little bit. Okay, so working group summaries. If you have not sent your working group summary to the mail list, if you want to come up and give us a short blurb, we'd appreciate it. We're not checking you. You'll have to self-report if you didn't do it.
Chris Anasio, Skit, we met just before this. Good conversation. Looks like we're coming close to readying our architecture draft for publication. Hopefully by the next meeting, but I won't promise that. And otherwise, the API is progressing.
Thank you. We'll do that.
OAuth work group, we had 2 meetings, Monday and Tuesday, and we still have one more tomorrow at 1 p.m. We have lots of documents to discuss. Some of them are existing work group documents, some are new documents. So if you're interested in OAuth, join us.
Hello, Sean Turner. So for MLS, we were kind of stuck on one particular issue in the architecture draft, which is stopping us from rechartering. But shout out to Brendan, Richard, Britta, and Rowan, who got together in the room and solved our problems. So that document should be moving, and then we'll do the recharter. And then like 15 extension documents will come flying into the working group. So that'll be exciting. So that was a very fruitful meeting, I thought. And for adults, we had 2 of the 4 drafts that we were looking at well, they were all discussed, but 2 of the 4 are actually out now for working group call for adoption. And the one draft where we didn't have anybody to volunteer for, we suddenly got like a bunch of world-class experts who threw out their names in the ring to at least help with the draft. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll do good. That's like the hard, like the finding algorithm problem. We got like, Nadia and Matt Green and some others. So I was like, ooh, exciting. So good. We're on a launching forward mode. So thanks.
Nancy?
I forgot to get on the queue.
That's
So
fine.
for SCIM, we met, the cursor pagination draft is maturing. We're looking for interoperability right now. I think there's a couple of vendors looking at implementing that. We discussed the notion of doing Delta queries. That is another draft that's still under discussion. Questions about how we might manage CRUD at scale. And the device models had a pre-early sector review of that draft. So that's the draft for how we can handle IoT devices in SCIM. So the authors are working and responding that and maturing that draft so that hopefully we can get to working group last call.
Thank you. We would also appreciate and love to have a couple of note takers. If anybody's interested in doing that. Hedgedoc is around, easy peasy. Just a couple of notes to give us a little bit of hints when we put the notes together. They're all studiously looking at their laptops. Shocking. Thank you. Awesome. Yay. Oh, there we go. And Mike. Thank you very much. All right. Next. These are the list of related non-security area activities. I don't know whether anybody wants to come to the mic and talk about any of these. So, yes, Watson?
Yes, I think NIST is having a series of conferences, or maybe it's something more on accordion modes that might be of interest.
What kind of modes?
They say accordion, basically modes that deal with large amounts of data efficiently and have nice properties for, I don't want to figure out what my associated data versus my message is.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Justin Richer, co-chair of Whimsy, and we met earlier this week, and we've got a lot of, we've got 2 drafts in process, one that's going for adoption, and a lot of really good energy going into the group. We're under art, but still very security focused, and a lot of security nerds are hanging out in the group. So encourage folks, if you're interested in sort of workload identity space, and especially cross-domain identity and security topics, that's what we're going to be focusing on in Whimsy. A lot of good stuff happening there, though.
So, yeah. So new non-working group mailing lists. We reopened the Secure Shell working mailing list. Now, SSH turns out was used for something not Secure Shell originally. Something about secure handbooks. So we kicked that to the curb. Yeah, right. So we thought it was more appropriate to use SSH as opposed to whatever you used before, which was SecSH or something. So SSH is now Secure Shell, and the email list is open. And so if you are a proponent of SSH and want to be involved in what's hopefully a up and coming working group, you should hop in there and join. We also posted this week a new mailing list for the post-quantum DNSSEC proponents, and that list is there. Again, you should, if you're interested in post-quantum security for DNSSEC, that's the place to go. And then NASR, the Network Attestation for Secure Routing, has a mailing list as well. We listed it here. I think routing might have actually opened that. Don't tell them we're pitching it. So. So, Mr. Unsworth, do you want to come to the mic? Or maybe Paul? We'll take Paul.
Okay, so on the post-quantum DNSSEC, that's a mailing list that's actually sort of also doing research. So if you're kind of person who, in fact, wants to do research on not just protocols, but how they are used operational. The idea behind this is post-quantum signatures are big. DNS is really good with things that aren't big. When things get big, things happen and we're not really sure what. So this is partially crypto, but it is also partially operational with what happens when a UDP protocol has to deal with a lot of TCP. If that interests you, please come and join the list.
Mike, I mean, I answered him on the chat.
Yeah, right. So I was wondering if you could speak for sort of on record here, speak to people who aren't aware, like what is the current status of who owns the SSH protocol, and is IETF sort of adding one more standard to a pot of already existing standards, or what?
The SSH RFCs today. There was an SSH working group back in the day. We would like to kick one off again in coordination with the open source community. So that work is in progress. Stay tuned. If you're interested in being involved in that work, the SSH mailing list is the place to go. He's coming. He's a long way from the mic. We'll add to his steps for the day.
I don't think it's adding a new standard. I think it is, shall we say, documenting and establishing the existing standard instead of what's a lot of outdated stuff that's hanging around the IETF. So I think it's about maybe bringing the IETF back into this protocol in a healthy way.
Deidre.
Do you know of any initiatives with SSH protocol that the IETF is interested in pursuing, like post-quantum SSH? They have, in the open SSH implementation, they have one PQ key agreement, and I think they're adding MLChem, which is great. Other things to figure out include authentication. There are things we would like to change in SSH to the protocol in general. So these are things, are they interest of a possible working group?
So those are things that can be explored, right? So there's some initial maintenance work that needs to be done to bring things sort of up to current. We want to be a little bit careful to make sure that we're only doing things that are implementable and have been implemented. And so most of the work is going to be focused around there. We don't want to upset the apple cart too much here. And we're hoping to keep it as cordial as we can. Not to put too fine a point on that. So I do think we're going to start with the easy stuff. The post-quantum algorithm stuff is definitely going to come up. It may not be the first thing that happens.
Thank you.
I did push the button. We do have an AD sponsored draft in the queue. It's you can see it on the slide. So we're going to work on that. Not our favorite thing to do, possibly. Errata processing. Yay. How did we close -50?
Okay, so what happens is we closed 50, but 27 were added, so we only like 125 on our backlog. So please work on the erratas when you can. It's a good use of your time. Help the ADs. Send just a short message to the list about I've confirmed this, I've verified this, or this seems rejectable. That would greatly help your ADs to just cleaning this up.
That's great. Is there like a little video on YouTube about how to do this? Because I think it's something I could help with.
Wait,
but I don't know
video
how.
on YouTube?
Sorry, I know I'm just trying to say, like, I've heard this several times. I've been coming for a year. I'm like, oh, I'd love to chip in. Where do I learn how to do it?
We can show you. We can show you. There's a fabulous interface.
But that's not scalable.
No, well,
You
it's
could
not.
show me and I could make a YouTube
Yeah,
video.
no, so the problem is there's a backlog. So the backlog, you have to go to the fabulous interface, right? For the new stuff that comes in, it comes to the mailing list already. And if you just hop on it right away, then there's no need to go to the fabulous interface. You can just, like the RFC comes in and you say, oh yeah, that's a good one. That's a good catch. We should verify that or validate that. And you reply to it and say, validate it. And then we fix it. It's the old stuff that you have to, there is an interface on the RFC editor for errata, and you can search by RFC number or by area or by whatever and find all sorts of stuff. There's an even better fabulous interface for those of us that have to actually change the state of a errata, which is different. Anyway, so. All right, SecAD pointers. We do have a wiki. We also have a list of common discuss items that we use when drafts go to the telechat before they're published. You can also see what documents we're sitting on, have not yet done, or working on. And a list of what's on the next telechat. Telechat is what happens when documents before they're published. What? Oh, there we go. Okay, fine. Oh, so we also have a pool of sector reviewers that look at all the drafts before they come to us. You can request early reviews of sectors if you have documents that you think, drafts that you think could use an early security review. You can request it. This group of people does a fabulous job. This is how many they've done. Statistics on it, basically. Uh-oh.
Sorry, this is Elliot. I just want to make one comment as somebody who's just recently been reviewed, which is a shout out to Mike Unsworth for a big fat thank you to as an author to the reviewers and to him in particular.
Right. I was going to write him an email note saying, hey, good job. What was that for, skim? Yeah, it was for a skim draft. Okay, keep going. Oh, so now this is Rafat and Dick Hart want to come talk about. I'm turning this off.
Pictures too. Yeah. These glasses aren't going to work either up here like last time. Okay. Next slide. So I got ChatGPT to help me make a diagram. I don't know if you can read it, but this is really, the picture epitomizes the problem we're trying to solve, is that there's a bunch of different people doing work. It's all kind of identity related. They're really kind of talking about sort of the same thing, but they have different words for it. Or they're using the same word, but they actually have different meanings. And so, one of the problems is people don't know that people are doing things related to what they're doing. And then the other problem is, somebody from one group has an idea of what they think a word means. They go to another group, people are using the same word. Nobody really calls out the fact that they actually have a different meaning in this other context. Next slide. So one of the things we're thinking to do to help on awareness is in future meetings, we might do lightning talks where people go over the why around what their work is, just to give people a high level idea of stuff that's going on that might not be as easily digestible by just trying to look at a draft. Focus, quick lightning talks, talking about why a draft's being worded as opposed to the details of what it does. Next slide. And then the other one that we've made some progress on is terminology. And Virat and I have chatted to a bunch of people in, all the back end on IETF. at the SF meeting, somebody pointed out 4949. We thought, well, maybe we're going to update, thank you, update that. And then we thought, well, we actually need this to be a living document, but there isn't really examples of that in how things work. So we've been trying to figure out, well, how do we go about doing that? And we have some ideas about that. You know, one of the things that we know we don't want to do is we don't want to be creating new definitions. What we really want to do is gather definitions from existing documents and pull those all together so people know what they are, and then potentially be able to look at new drafts that are being published as people are doing work and they're using a word to be able to go and say, hey, there is a definition for the word, or maybe you should use a different term because there's already a definition that means what you're talking about, but they call it a different thing, to try to, you know, have it so that people know what people are talking about. And we had a side meeting earlier today that we talked about it. And next slide. We're going to have a side meeting tomorrow at 10. I think I only had 5 minutes, but I guess if there's questions, there's one person in the queue.
Paul Hoffman, you mentioned RFC 4949. There's also RFC 9499, which is a DNS terminology document. It isn't a living draft. It isn't a living document. It is an RFC. It's in its 3rd edition now. It's DNS terminology, some of which is security. In your discussions, I can't be in your side meeting tomorrow, please consider actually making an RFC. What we have found is a lot of people can't find living documents as easily as they can find RFCs. RFCs are super helpful. 9499, I'm one of the co-authors. I get messages at least once or twice a month from somebody saying, I sort of know a little bit about DNS. I looked at this document, boy, was I wrong. So, which is sort of what you want. You not only want to help people new, but you want to help people who think they know something who don't. So do consider maybe actually doing it as an RFC. It's worked well for us in the DNS world.
So some of the challenge, thank you, Paul. And we thought a bunch about that, but the terms and new documents are coming up a fair amount in the identity area. And so as a fixed document, we saw that as the challenge, and that it wasn't until you mentioned 4949 that many of us even knew that it existed. And so part of what we're investigating is how do we get references to the glossary into RFC so that people have awareness of that, and that as new terms come up, people can call out to people to say, hey, there is a term that's already defined, as opposed to nobody even knows about it because there's not really enough references to it. So, but Paul, would love to chat with you separately. If you're not going to make a side meeting, grab me and let's talk. And I'd love to want to learn from your learnings. Thank you.
So, okay, so Jessica, the queue is closed, but if you can make it quick, then.
Oh, I really just wanted to say +1 to making it an RFC, because I think it also makes it easier to reference in other RFCs. And we're doing similar things I've seen in like the post-quantum area. So I think it's kind of common to have a terminology RFC. So just +1. Thanks.
Thanks for giving me time here. The only reason it's at this level is because the working group that this could have been in is now concluded. And so one of the asks I have in this talk is if you're a chair and you think this is appropriate for your working group, let me know. I would be happy to participate in that one. There is there are a couple of drafts from the SEC events working group that has concluded. One is the push draft, push delivery and poll delivery. And there are some limitations, like I've mentioned on the slide, because of which we need a new draft. And in the shared signals working group in the OpenID Foundation, we're seeing increasing number of situations where a transmitter and receiver, are both the same thing, and they're talking to other parties which are also transmitters and receivers. And so we need this kind of two-way transport And that's why we're doing this. Next slide, please. And so it's very simple. We have defined a communications object that contains three things. There is a security event tokens array, and then there is a set of security event tokens that you're acknowledging, and then a set of security event tokens about which you're reporting errors, right? And you, so this is really nothing new. It is all in a part of the poll delivery spec, RFC 8936. And what we're doing is, binding this in two ways. Next slide, please. So we can do it using WebSockets, or we can do it using HTTP request response. And there's just one minor field that is added when you're doing HTTP requests to this, just to follow how it has been done in the RFC 8936. So it's really a very simple spec, and I'm looking for guidance as to how to take this forward from where it is right now, because the working group has concluded. Yaron?
As Yaron Sheffer, as the former chair of SEC event, I think I represent my co-chair as well, Dick. Even though the mailing list still exists, SEC event dwindled to basically nothing at the end, and even the mailing list is really non-existent. So just expressing the bare facts.
I think the shared signals working group is interested in this work, so there'll be uptake. Yeah.
So we'll also talk about like maybe AD sponsoring or something. So we'll get back to you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
And so for our next presentation, we have Nadia Henger, who is an awesome cryptographer, and she breaks things all the time. And she's going to talk about how she broke Radius.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for giving me time here to tell you a fun story, I suppose. So this is joint work with a number of people who are listed on this slide. And among these people, Miro Haller, who is my student, is also here. And we will be talking about this in more detail tomorrow at the RADEXT working group if you want more technical details. Next slide. And also, if you want all of the details, our paper is online here, and it will appear at Usenix Security next month. So, next slide. So the summary is that there is a protocol vulnerability in Radius. It hard codes a weak authentication method, which is based off of the broken MD5 hash function. It has been known that MD5 is broken for 20 years. The vulnerability is a little bit more subtle than that, which is, I think, why it was continued to allow to exist in the protocol. But the outcome is that a man-in-the-middle network attacker can forge arbitrary radius responses for non-EAP authentication modes, and this works in basically every implementation because it is a protocol vulnerability. So the implications of this, I'll explain the protocol in more detail, but you can turn an access reject into an access accept. A man-in-the-middle attacker can do this. A man-in-the-middle attacker could also add arbitrary network access attributes to an access accept that they desire to forge. Our attack is practical with a little star, which is that we have a proof of concept. We didn't optimize it fully for realistic runtimes, but it could happen. And this vulnerability is present from the earliest versions of Radius in the 1990s, and it has never been updated. So, next slide. So all talks, there's always an XKCD. So this is the obligatory XKCD cartoon for this case. So Radius is the de facto standard lightweight protocol for authentication, authorization, and accounting. There was a follow-up protocol, Diameter, which never was as widely used. And Radius is literally everywhere, sort of underlying our networking infrastructure. I listed a bunch of cases here. So the reaction to our work has been a little bit split. Half the people we talk to are like, surely people would have run this over IPsec or TLS, and they would only use like EAP TLS authentication, so your attack is impractical. The other half of the people are like, yes, every ISP on the planet is doing PAP authentication over UDP and sending it over the open internet. So just to put that out there. Okay, so Radius is everywhere. Next slide. So to remind everybody how Radius works, since I'm sure you all are super familiar with the RFC and have like read it in great detail. This is, so to do, say, authentication, you have a Radius client and a Radius server, and this allows sort of remote authentication validation. And so end user or an admin or whoever wishes to log into a network device, they enter some credentials. The Radius client that is running on that device sends a request to the server. This is often over UDP. The request contains some metadata, such as username and an obfuscated user password. The server evaluates the request, perhaps by sending it on to a further authentication server, and then sends back an accept or reject, which may also contain some parameters. There have been, let's see, so there was an experimental status draft for TLS encryption for Radius. This is more than 10 years old. It never left experimental status, but it was implemented by some, but not all vendors. And then there is a current draft, which is intended to be standardized, that formalizes TLS for Radius. Okay, next slide. So the packet formats in particular, so an access request looks something like this. This is a very nice byte-aligned protocol. It has a code. It has some values that identify the request. There's an ID and there's a value called a request authenticator. The authenticator is actually just a nonce. It's a random value. It doesn't actually validate any of the packet. And then there's a series of attributes that provide information about the request, such as I said before, username or password or other information about the request. This predates sort of modern cryptography, so the packet contents are totally unauthenticated, and the only authentication is the source IP address in the packet. A client and server share a fixed shared secret, which is pre-configured by whoever is setting up the network. And then passwords are obfuscated using we call it an obfuscation mode. It's sort of combining MD5 and the shared secret. This is not cryptographically secure, but it is not totally broken, other than it's not authenticated encryption. So we sort of ignore that in our paper, but it would be interesting to try to break that more fully. Okay, next slide. So the response packets look something like this. They contain a series of attributes that, so they have a code which identifies whether it's an accept or reject. There's also challenges and other responses that are possible. And then there's a series of attributes that provide parameters for the response, such as you can have a configurable reply message, or you can set privileges, or you can add sort of access information. And then this is attempted to be authenticated by a value which is called the response authenticator. So this is a 16-byte MD5 hash of some values, and I will show that on the next slide. So this is computed, so this construction predates HMAC, and so it is an ad hoc construction, which is essentially the response packet with the nonce from the request slotted into the packet value, and then you append the shared secret, and then you compute the MD5 hash of this. So, and then this is the value that is intended to, I guess, protect the integrity of the response against a network type attacker. Now, if you know that MD5 is vulnerable to hash collision attacks, it seems that the people who were looking at this protocol 20 years ago when MD5 was broken were like, well, this includes a shared secret, so we don't see how to do a collision attack against this, so it's probably okay for the moment. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the full history of Radius and MD5, I sort of mixed these together to show the story, because I think this is, for this audience, most interesting kind of as a story of what happens with protocols from the 1990s. So this protocol was originally designed in 1991 by Livingston. As early as 1993, MD5 was known to have weaknesses. There were partial collisions in the compression function. The initial Radius IETF draft was for 1994. It hard-coded this ad hoc MD5 construction. SHA-1 was published in 1995. HMAC was published in 1996. So by 1996, the IETF had the option of using HMAC SHA-1, which would have avoided this issue. I looked through the mailing list archives, and somebody with a .mil address suggested this and was ignored. So 1997, the first Radius RFC was published, and it included this ad hoc MD5 construction. Probably they weren't interested in changing because they had 3 to 6 years of backwards compatibility to worry about. Then the Radius RFC was updated, and there was an additional RFC that that published a bunch of extensions. The most interesting extension for our purposes was an attribute that was defined as optional, which is called the message authenticator, and that actually is HMAC MD5. But it was optional for non-EAP authentication modes. And so it was not enforced for non-EAP authentication modes in implementations. So 2004, the first full MD5 collision was published. And then by 2007, this was improved to what's called a chosen prefix MD5 collision. And this is the kind of attack that you actually want to use to break a protocol like Radius. And so this was applied in 2009 most famously to create the rogue CA colliding certificate that was using MD5 hash. A number of researchers found a certificate authority that was still allowing MD5, and they were able to create a malicious certificate and sign a TLS certificate that then gave them CA privileges. And this was actually exploited in the real world by the Flame malware against Microsoft signing infrastructure later. So in 2007, a further RFC discussing Radius security left the message authenticator attribute optional. And then as late as December 2023, a draft written by Alan over here mentioned that there have been as yet no attacks on Radius authenticator signatures which are stronger than brute force. Okay, so that's the history of Radius and MD5. I guess next slide. So it turns out, the reason that I'm here is that if you understand the structure of MD5 chosen prefix collisions, then the response authenticator is vulnerable to a chosen prefix attack. It looks something like this. You fix a prefix, which is the value in gray. So this is a packet that an attacker wishes to forge a collision for. And then the way the attack works is that you feed this into a collision implementation. It produces, say, hundreds of bytes of essentially garbage. But after that, you have, say, 2 different prefixes, and then you append garbage to each of them, and at the end, you have a collision. And once you have a collision, then you can append the same value and get the same hash. And so in order to carry out a practical attack against Radius, we needed to hide this gibberish into a protocol attribute, and it turns out that there is a protocol attribute called proxy state, which is perfect for this attack. And once the attacker has done this collision, they can copy a response authenticator from an observed response from a valid server into their forged response. So we will cover this in more detail tomorrow. Next slide. So in summary, our attack is a man-in-the-middle attack, and it has to be an online man-in-the-middle attack because of the nonce in the request authenticator. And so the attacker observes a valid request, modifies it by injecting a proxy state attribute, computes the collision, injects the proxy state attribute, gets a reject back from the server, and then copies the response authenticator from the reject into the accept that they want to forge. We'll do this in more detail tomorrow. Next slide. So Since this is a man-in-the-middle attack, it is less vulnerable if you have a well-protected network. It is more vulnerable if you're sending radius traffic over UDP, over the open internet. And this attack also doesn't apply because HMAC MD5 is secure against MD5 collision attacks. And so even though MD5 is broken, HMAC MD5 is not vulnerable to this attack, which means that if the message authenticator attribute is required, this attack does not apply. And in particular, since it's required for EAP authentication, EAP authentication modes are not vulnerable to practical attack. Okay, next slide. So the short-term mitigation, I phrased this wrong. Basically, the short-term mitigation is that all implementations need to require the message authenticator attribute. The long-term mitigation is to send all radius traffic over TLS, and this is in progress in the current draft. Next slide. We can meditate on TLS for a moment. I think the next slide is the last one. I'm going to finish up with some sort of thoughts for discussion and introspection, which is that I want to draw an analogy to the series of attacks against SSL and TLS. So there are a number of protocol facts about SSL and TLS that the IETF had the option of fixing in the 90s, and they chose not to because they were worried about, say, 3 years of backwards compatibility, which then rose again decades later in a series of vulnerabilities in more modern TLS implementations of the protocols. And I think we have a similar situation here where worries over 3 years of backwards compatibility led to insecurities that were only realized 30 years later after this has been totally embedded into network infrastructure. So one is, how did this go unnoticed for so long? People say, oh, we knew about it. We knew that MD5 was insecure, but somehow it didn't get changed. And then the question is, what else is out there? What else are we missing? And I also want to say that this is actually one of the smoothest vulnerability disclosures that I've ever done. And so I want to specifically call out Cert and Alan for helping so much with the coordination. So. And then I think Alan has some thoughts also to add.
So thank you very much for this awesome work, Nadia, and we definitely hope to not see you again soon.
Hello, so how did we get here? This gets into a little more detail, a little bit of overlap with what Nadia was saying. Radius got defined by Livingston. There's some discussion on security in 97. In fact, according to people I talked to who were there at the time, I only started coming to the IETF about 97, 98. Apparently there's almost fistfights between people like Jeff Schiller, who said, oh God, no, I'm going to forbid this. And everyone else went, I don't care, we deployed it. And 30 years later, we're still here fighting with that. 98, HMAC starts being defined. In fact, one of the things I found going through this, which I had forgotten, was a complaint by me in 98 that we should fix this. So it's been that long. It's been known that long. Partly in response to similar complaints on the mailing list. 2869 has a long section on, yeah, we can do message authenticator. It doesn't really matter. Nobody cares. It's fine. We don't need it. 2007, I'm the co-author on 5080. Can we please just use HMAC? So far as I know, there's only one radius server that actually implemented this. And the suggestion in 5080 was, when you're sending packets, always add the HMAC and add a flag for reception going, if we don't see this HMAC, drop it. I don't think anyone else implemented that. And it was not made mandatory because of historical reasons of, oh, now my implementation is going to be non-compliant. And 10 years, 17 years later, oops, maybe we should have fixed this a while ago, right? If everyone had fixed this either in 2000 or even 2007, this issue would have been, oh yeah, you know that flag, just set that flag, it'll be fine, we can move on. Next slide. So there's a lot of pushback. Does anyone still use Radius, right? There has been a lot of pushback from a lot of people. Nobody knows anything about Radius. The reason I think nobody looked at this is nobody cares, right? It's an old protocol. It's been replaced by Diameter, right? Diameter is the next generation up and coming. Despite what the Diameter RFC say, most Diameter security is source IP filtering, and everything is sent in raw TCP. And if you look, there was a article by CISA, one of the cybersecurity agencies, going, yes, people are being tracked and located by nation states who are watching the Diameter traffic. So we just have to secure everything. Hasn't everyone switched to EAP TLS and all this new magic post-quantum crypto? No, no, no. People haven't. MD5 is fine. There are big companies today advertising that they send Radius UDP over the internet with MS Chat, which has been broken for decades. So congratulations, your clear text passwords are effectively going over the internet. There are companies today saying that they recommend against using PAP because it's insecure, despite the fact that no one has been able to break it. So there is a lot of absolutely terrible advice, terrible practice out there. There are ISPs where their alleged internal network is sending Radius traffic over the internet. They buy connectivity from someone who buys it from someone else. And then there are recommendations to fix this by switching away from Radius to Kerberos TACACS or IPsec. I don't quite understand what that is. It's done mostly by people who have buzzword bingo and checklists rather than actually understanding things, unfortunately. Next slide. Radius isn't the only one. I mean, there's issues like the CVE, local DHCP server, because DHCP is completely untrusted, can spoof routes and get some of the VPNs to bypass the VPN. And, this has only been known for decades, right, Paul? Right? Everyone knows this. Why would this be an issue? It's been 20 years. Yeah, and that goes to my other question of, if you're authenticating to the net, you do 802.1x and post-quantum crypto and, 8192-bit keys, blah, 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 blah. And then you have this DHCP packet where you just sort of throw it over the wall and hope to God someone answers it. And you don't know who answers it and they don't know who you are, but that's fine. Yeah, this other CISA article I mentioned recently, state-sponsored actors monitor Diameter to find out where you are and to attack you based on where you are. This is happening today, and the only reason they don't mention Radius is they probably either don't know about it or don't care, right? Other issues in other protocols, DHCP can request DDNS updates. So if you forget to put www for your company into DNS, I can put it into a DHCP update, and now I own www.yourcompany. And the response from a lot of vendors has been, yep, that's the way that works. So yeah, the internet is built on sand, right? DNS is in the process of being updated with DNS over TLS, DNS over HTTPS. DNS is secure. That's great. There are still things out there which are hideous piles of, I won't mention, including Radius. Next slide. Thank you. So how do we get here? A lot of operational people don't talk to crypto people. National cybersecurity centers, I won't mention countries like Canada, don't talk to the crypto people and have recommendations which are complete nonsense. If the specs are not extremely clear on security issues, they will get ignored. Right? I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people where they say the RFC allows me to do that. Well, it doesn't, right? The RFC is silent on a lot of topics because no one thought you should put "don't do stupid things" into the RFCs. Well, if you read my documents now, they are enormous and they go into excruciating detail precisely for these kinds of reasons. And then, as I was saying earlier, you know, we have 802.1x and then raw UDP packets. There are reasons for this. RFC 5505 is an IEB document which says you should separate network layer security from application layer security. There are reasons for that separation. I'm not sure I agree that they are required to be separated and that it is always useful to be separated. It just seems weird to me that we're using post-quantum crypto and completely unauthenticated UDP packets. Next slide. So what to do next? How are we going to fix not just Radius, how are we going to fix the other protocols, and who's responsible other than the people remaining in this room who have to have the gumption to get up and do things which are not always politically correct, not always business correct, but as I've discovered, will come back and bite you 27 years later. I think that's it. Questions?
Actually, we're going to skip questions if you don't mind, because we don't have much time and we've got some other topics to go. So thank you very much for the presentation. And I just want to make a correction. There was a blatant error I made on some of the earlier slides. Heather Flanagan is, of course, not the outgoing SPICE chair. She is one of our wonderful incoming SPICE chairs. I will fix up the deck for posterity after the meeting. So next, cryptography for IETF protocols. So we are often approached by people that want to have a certain algorithm handled through the IETF and given an RFC number. And there's various ways you can do this, and usually it also means that people can start walking one path and then come back to other paths, and on multiple ways, all the paths lead to the security ADs who then have to see how to do this. There's no formal policy for this, and what we're hoping to get out of this is the start of a discussion on how we can maybe somewhat formalize this process so that everybody is treated equally. So a bit of an overview. So there's 4 streams that can produce RFC. So we've got the main Internet Engineering Task Force stream through the working groups, ISG, involving the security area directors and the working groups. There's the Internet Architecture Board that can do things and write RFCs with recommendations, although it tends not to technical specifications. We've got the independent stream editor that is usually also involved traditionally in some of the crypto RFCs. And then there's the Internet Research Task Force, IETF, with the CFRG and the crypto panel that are related to this. Historically, we haven't really said much about formalizing this. This has mostly been sort of an informal process. So you see very few RFCs are related to sort of policy on process questions on cryptography RFCs. And so we're lacking here, and we'd like to fix that. There's a lot of algorithms that come in. So this is a list of some of them that have happened through various ways. Some of them went through the independent stream. Some of them went through AD sponsored. Some of them are so old that they were streams that no longer exist. But again, the point of this slide is mostly to say that there's various documents that come in various ways that are not really in any way standardized process-wise. And then we also have the cryptographic suites or profiles that also come in that are then using these specific cryptographic algorithms or make recommendations on their use for it. And they also come in via different streams. And that also adds to the problem of getting a transparent, consistent policy within the whole IETF. So just a reminder, the registration policies on various IANA registries are specification required, expert review, standard section RFC, or any RFC, or first come, first serve, or any combinations thereof that, that people decided to put into the registry. So just to point out that we can actually have code points with algorithms that do not have an RFC. So that's mostly why we put this here. We have fixed up some of the registries in the recent past. For instance, some, but not all of the DNSSEC registries got updated. The TLS registries are now, I believe, either specification required or actually expert. Are they expert review? I have a slide. I do. That's true. That's true. I have a slide. Why do I remember this? Okay. So yeah. So here's some of the most common groups and how the IANA registries currently are. What we're trying to do is to say, like, is there any left that have RFC required where we can relax that to be either specification required or some kind of expert review? Because after all, the goal of the IETF is to make the internet work even better with where everybody can experiment with their own code points. And once enough people of us like the code points, then we can sort of start recommending them and maybe giving them a nice RFC number. Then there's the role of the CFRG. I'm probably not phrasing it the way they would like it to be phrased, but we sort of see them as our local experts in the IETF, where we go with all of our questions and then we ask for help, and we're sort of counting on them to see which algorithms are getting popular, are properly researched in the public community, have credibility, et cetera, et cetera. But of course, they're not like, we cannot go to them and ask them to make a decision for us. They are an advisory body to us. So this is part of the proposal that we'd like to bring forward. CFRG doesn't tell us which ones to use. The new algorithm, preferably, sorry, let me rephrase this. Any algorithm that the CFRG hasn't recommended towards us for, like, broad adoption, we preferably do not want to give them an RFC number. Unfortunately, RFC numbers are used for various reasons, marketing and mindshare, that that would not be good for us to just like hand out many of them and then later on finding out that many of them have fundamental problems in them. We should give them a code point as much as we can, but any kind of sort of recommended yes or should or must status should really come from the IETF community as a consensus forming decision, preferably through the working groups. Why do people want an RFC? Like I said, there's many reasons why people want an RFC, but a lot of them sort of do not apply to us, and we preferably don't want to hand out RFC numbers for these reasons. So this is our strawman proposal that we want to throw out there for people to give us feedback about. So probably I can just leave this slide up and people can read them, and hopefully we can have a discussion on what people think of this. So thanks. Yeah. So we've unlocked the queue now, and now everybody can step forward. Sean.
Hi, Sean Turner. So I guess one of my questions here is the ISE is like, don't go to the ISE to ask for an algorithm. So I've made my new cool algorithm and I show up and you're basically saying, I would go to the CFRG and they're like, no, you're crazy, man. You're not a crypto person. You can't get one of these. And I go to the ISE and I convince them it's possible to do this. Is this IETF policy is going to tell the ISE, say no?
So first of all, we as security EDs cannot set the IEC policy.
Fair enough.
So we might make recommendations to the IEC, who is now going to the microphone to give us maybe some input.
Great. Oh, look, you're so close. That's awesome. Thanks. I'm just curious because that's what I foresee happening at some point. So.
Hi, I'm the ICE, the Independent Submissions Editor. So I don't set policy for the IETF, and the IETF doesn't set policy for me. However, we know that there is a relationship here between the two. It's, I would say this is going to come up tomorrow in ICE Open. The ICE, at least the current ICE, is predisposed to sort of be congruent with this policy. There may be exceptions. One of them is listed. Actually, like DNS key becomes a little tricky because of the way, because there's a limited code point and requires an RFC. But we can continue this tomorrow if you want for ICE policy.
So I think before it kind of like made a little sense because we had Jim Shog, rest his soul, because he would go implement all the things. So the GOS guy showed up and said, hey, we want this thing to be standardized. And he's like, cool, but I found all these bugs because I wrote the code to make it do it. So we don't have that person anymore, the person who's willing to do that kind of stuff. So I think this makes some sense where you kind of are talking and saying, don't do this. So cool.
Right. So in that case, it's a specification in our profile and it's the bottom bullet, right? Watson.
Hello, Watson Lad Akamai. I'm a little confused by how I'm supposed to read these lists. Are they ors in the first thing or ands?
Can you say that again? Your microphone's not great.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out in the first big bullet, are those 3 alternative reasons to publish a crypto RFC, or do they all have to be true?
No. So, yes. Hold on. So if it's vetted by a public cryptographic community outside the IETF, or if it's recommended, you have to have and. We can talk about this. I would say, or it's recommended by CFRG. What's that? Is that or? Okay. Then you could publish it as a crypto RFC. You can choose that to be recommended. It's Thursday, okay? This. That's it's up to a working group, right? So working groups will decide whether they want recommended yes or recommended no. That's not something that comes up normally in an ISE. I would expect if it goes through the ISE system that it would be recommended. I mean, it wouldn't, it's there, right? But it wouldn't be an MTI, right? I would expect for TLS, IPSec, that you would have recommended yes through the working group, not through some alternate process. Does that help you?
I think it clarifies the point I asked about, which is good, and it probably gave information other people were curious about. I think with the first bullet point, that is an assumption that I've seen again and again people make, that there's interest and ability for very busy academics in an extremely competitive and fast-moving field to do this. And that really isn't the case. I mean, the best case scenario is NIST competitions, but we very often have real protocol needs where NIST is not interested. So for instance, SPAKE 2, you have Kerberos saying, okay, we need a better way to handle users with usernames and passwords in certain conditions where you don't have a shared PKI or secure channel. They have to go to the CFRG to go get SPAKE, some kind of key agreement through. So I think that we should not imagine the first one will work.
So Watson, let me maybe rephrase the point so that it becomes more clear to you. What I meant to say with the first 2 points is basically that we don't want a black box to come here and get an RFC number. What we would like is for the worldwide public cryptography community to have looked at this, and we are kind of assuming that the CFRG are sort of channeling that community, are active there, and are sort of helping us analyze what has happened outside the IETF and bring that knowledge to the IETF, so to then make the best decision possible within the IETF community. Martin.
All right. So I think, thank you, Watson, for clarifying this first point. I think it still requires a little bit more nuance and sophistication. The work that's been done in the IETF is often cryptographic work to some extent. We did the work on TLS and the Sigma protocol on which it is based, and the variations that were added on top of that is essentially cryptographic work. And the working group was confident in the composition of all of those things because of the work that it did. And that was work that happened here in the IETF. And the CFRG has a very important role in all of this in terms of, in this case, choosing symmetric ciphers, AEDs, the hashing functions, all sorts of other things. But the protocol work that happened in TLS and it was the work of that working group. I think this is going to be something where insisting upon a recommendation from the CFRG is increasingly less viable, given the breadth of things that we're trying to do with cryptography across the community. And it really comes down to having an understanding in this community as a whole, putting trust in working groups in doing the process, but also having a broader conversation about whether what the working groups are doing is in need of further review, whether that be by external cryptographic communities, the CFRG, or something else.
So we envisioned this, so working groups will do the same work that they have always done. This doesn't impact what a working group does. It's when the working group does not wish to take on the work, or there isn't a working group. So for example, there's a couple of cases, there's a couple of cases in TLS where TLS has said, we're unwilling to take on that work. You need to go elsewhere. And so that's one of the reasons those TLS registries have been opened in such a way that allows them to get a code point, right?
That's code points within TLS, and
Yeah.
that's a very specific discussion
Yeah,
about
exactly.
grabbing code points, which I think you have basically right on this slide.
Right.
We should make that more open.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the cryptographic work that is TLS. I'm talking not the cipher suites or anything like that. I'm talking about what TLS is. I'm talking about things like what's happening in Privacy Pass to define new things. There are cryptographic components that they're using that are coming in from academic work.
Do you think that that work is not being done properly now?
So no, I don't. In fact, I think
Okay.
that work is reasonably happening within this organization. The problem that I'm seeing is that there is a number of people, and I apologize for taking this much time because there's a very long queue.
It's okay.
There's a lot of people who take the assumption that the CFRG has a monopoly on the cryptographic review, and I think that has created problems for the CFRG in terms of the amount of things that they are being asked to do.
Right.
We saw a bunch of things today.
I agree.
And this community can take responsibility for some of those things without necessarily creating that dependency.
Right.
And that's not something that I got from the
That's why I
discussion
want
thus
that to
far.
be an or.
Sure. But those are not the only things that happens here, because vetted by public cryptographic community outside the IETF is kind of meaningless to me, right?
So again, let me clarify a little bit. We were here more thinking about those parts where you can sort of pop in one cipher for another. So someone comes with another algorithm and just want to pop in one for the other. I wasn't really talking about sort of the whole TLS protocol design. Because nobody comes here. If people come to the IETF and say, I've got a replacement for TLS, we already have known answers for that.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the answers we're looking for right here. We're here looking for an answer like, I have something that replaces ASGCM here. Here's the specification. We didn't tell you how we
Okay.
got to it. These are the magic code point, or these are the magic values. Please accept it.
All right.
Then we're saying like, you can have a code point, but not an RFC. That's
All right.
our
Okay.
hope.
I see where you're going. Please strike the last line. I think that the ISE will set policies for the ISE. That would say something else. It would say, we will not publish profiles and suites, which I don't think is true, given what some of the working groups in the organization are doing.
Right. What we're trying to say there is that we really don't want people to do like go shopping, go venue shopping, right? And like if they don't get something inside the IETF stream, that they just go to the IEC stream and try to push them.
Sorry, just a point of clarification from the ICE, which is just because somebody comes to the ICE doesn't mean things get through.
All right, Wes Rediker, ISI. In general, I like the proposal. I think it makes, I'm over here, guys. You're scanning. I think it makes a lot of sense, except that the line only crypto that needs IANA recommended yes should get an RFC. That makes sense, but you need the flip side of that too, as we've discovered in DNSOP, right? You also don't want a bunch of other random things coming forward that get an entry and then somehow end up in recommended yes, but they don't have an RFC. You need to be able to, so what we ended up doing in DNSOP is we actually have 4 columns, right? We have implementation for verification, implementation for signing, and obviously there's encryption and decryption type stuff too. And then there is actually deployment, should it be used in the wild? But the important thing that we added was anything that comes through that needs a new cryptographic entity in the IANA table, at most can have a may, right? At most can say may be implemented, because just a yes or no doesn't work. If you're going to do must, should, not, all of that kind of level, then you don't want other things coming through. So I would change your first one to, if you get an RFC and if it's standard, then you can have a strong implementation or deployment requirement, but
Right.
Otherwise.
So I think we agree. In a few slides before this, I sort of said like the recommended /shoot/must language. So like each working group has slightly different ways how they sort of put this information in their registries. And so I agree with you that flexibility is not something we want to remove.
Right. And do also note that we are making certain requirements for all future working groups. Like if you ever need a crypto algorithm, then you're actually having a whole new table in IANA with a new column with new, we're setting the stage for the future.
Well, I am much more concerned about the second main bullet. Drafts are updated, as Sean just said a couple of minutes ago. We all miss Jim, but there are people who will implement a draft, find a problem, report it, and then we hope that the draft is updated. IANA registries should, in fact, I would say must, IANA registries for crypto must have a version, if they are for a draft, must have a version number, and it must be easy to get another code point later if it gets updated.
Yeah.
If you don't have the second one, then there's a strong motivation not to fix things that are known to
Right.
be
So
wrong.
for instance, with the Enter Your Prime draft, the IANA registry actually has the version of the draft there as well.
Okay. No, I understand, but many of them don't. Many of the crypto algorithms that are specification required are just the draft number, are just the draft name and not the draft number. So if you're going to go forward with this, I think you need a strong must have a version number to be acceptable.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Mike St. John's, just curmudgeon. I got 3 items. First thing here, I think what you mean by that first sentence is limit publication of RFCs containing cryptography to those containing cryptography that meets this requirement, as opposed to a crypto RFC versus cryptographic primitive versus cryptographic protocols, which was what I think Martin was headed down the structure. So the crypto RFCs doesn't mean anything useful in this particular case. One of the things that we've done for a long period of time in the IETF is we use the RFC series as a co-publication series for things that may be standardized elsewhere, but they may be difficult to get a hold of. National standards for cryptography are one of those things that I would really hate that you guys suddenly go, oh no, we're just not gonna make those available in the RFC series. So be aware of that particular nuance with respect to a difference between public cryptography community and national standards, if you will. Last one, could you go back about 3 pages? Back to where you were talking about specification required. Go right there. Okay. When did we change the meaning of internet draft to allow this? This is an internet draft is not to be referenced by anything permanent.
Yeah, I agree. The Gen area is working on what the exact meaning of drafts are, whether they should expire or remain
Right.
forever. I want to try and avoid to have that discussion here.
I understand that, but you got this here as a fait accompli, and that is not what I understand to be the case currently. And I'm not sure everybody does. So
if you go to SSH and look up the latest and true prime.
yeah,
plus,
I'm aware of that, but I'm
that's-
also
that's an-
aware.
That's an internet draft with a version number.
I understand that, but
Okay.
what happened, but when I go looking at that particular model, this basically nobody paid attention when you guys started doing this publication because it was just a registry entry. So it wasn't a change that the IETF made consciously. And that's the thing that I'm concerned about when you start doing this.
We actually made this very consciously. We didn't want to have a statement that said the IETF now supports enter U prime for SSH. We were saying they have a code point and they can deploy it if they want, but it's not any kind of like recommendation from the IETF. And unfortunately, just getting an RFC number, the people outside the IETF see that as a recommendation by the IETF. And that's one of the core problems we're trying to fix here.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about that particular issue. That's fine, you can do that. But the question is, what is an internet draft? And there is a real reason, a really specific reason that we do not keep these things as references.
Again, go to the Gen dispatch discussion on draft for that.
Yes, that's me. Hi. I'd like to help sort of clarify and define the language here. If we go back to the slide we were just discussing, would that have the bullet points? Yes. So as was mentioned by the last speaker and by Martin, this idea of crypto RFCs could be interpreted much more broadly than you intend here. So perhaps a simplification here or a specification to narrow this down to what you really want is not crypto RFCs, but RFCs that define cryptographic primitives that fit into a known framework, such as signatures, chems, public key.
That is basically, that was what I meant, except I wanted to keep using a big font size.
Yeah, yeah, because as Martin mentioned, there's a lot of work that's done that's considered crypto that is one layer above a primitive, including defining what these interfaces might be, as we're seeing in MPC protocols and whatnot. So if we limit this to crypto or RFCs that define instantiations of crypto primitives, that basically something that would fit into an IANA registry, that would be a narrower and more appropriate scope for something like this and avoid stepping on the toes of the work. So stepping back, if this were more expansive, vetted by public cryptographic community outside the IETF, I would say the TLS protocol was, right? We incorporated papers from the formal analysis folks to help vet it and finalize TLS 1.3. But this is protocol design and it does intersect with crypto. So if this is narrowed down to just the primitives themselves, it would be a lot cleaner to make this proposal.
Short person, Rich Sauls. So in the past, first of all, thanks for doing this. I think it's important that we have an IETF-wide policy that does that. I'm one of the TLS designated experts, as was Nick, and it would really help. I think one concrete suggestion is, I think you really strongly should say designated expert, not spec required. For the TLS registries, the expert reviews that the document that is claimed to be publicly available is publicly available. We've seen many cases where people say, I want this. And then they say, well, where's the document? Oh, it's an ISO standard and we can't see it. So you can't implement it. So for interoperability, it's really important to have.
Okay, so just to quickly answer that. I think it could be that some of these registries actually only have specification required, which does not mean public specification
I
required.
understand.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I understand the difference, which is why I'm saying I think it should be ratcheted up a level. In the past, we've published documents on cryptographic primitives because we wanted an IFC reference for that. And I think it should be decide one way or another whether that's still a policy. Things we've done are MD5, X25519, EDDSA was published as an RFC first. So I think then you run into the problem of archival versus, oh, here's a link, bcrypt, scrypt, all of those things were published as RFCs. They were well known and accepted by the general internet community, but again, we didn't have references. That's it, thanks.
My name is Margaret Cullen. In this context, my most interesting affiliation is that I'm the expert reviewer for CAP-LAP. Code points hasn't come up in a long time, but it has come up in the past. And there are a few things here I think are subtle and that you need to be careful with. One is changing the definition of specification required will be confusing in some RFCs, because some of them say specification required and the specification must be blah, okay? I would use a different word if you're talking about a different thing, call it documentation required if it can be on a random person's FTP site or somewhere that's non-archival or non-public. And I support that. I support that we move a lot of things to be easier to get code points for, all right? But I think we need to be careful about not changing words out from under documents that might be using them in a specific way and even qualifying them. Also, I think we need to be really clear that expert review is not good enough in a document to say expert review. Expert review for what, okay? Some expert reviewers are implementing the spec and making sure it's perfect. Others are going, yes, that looks like a publicly accessible website to me. And those are not anywhere near the same thing. So I think we need to be really clear when we say expert review, what are we looking for in terms of expert review?
So I agree with both of your points, but I also want to raise that the security area is not the area that can change some of the interpretations or meanings of these words, right? That's an IETF area, wide area thing.
Yeah, I think there's a document, right, that defines these now and says specification required and what that means. But you're saying somewhere that what it means is anything, including drafts, et cetera. And I don't think that's what it means today. So I'm thinking maybe what we need to do is update that document to add a different category that includes all those things. I'm not volunteering to do that, so I don't need to come up with the word.
Okay, Warren has something to say about that.
Yeah, so actually there is work underway. It's been on the IESG. We're working on an agenda for a while. It's myself and Roman and Barry Lieber, and it's been on the agenda for like many, many weeks. Sometime we'll get to it, but yeah, it's basically redefining that. It's the ANA considerations thing.
Am I up? You are. Hi, Deirdre from Sandbox. Paul addressed one of my points that in CFRG, we just discussed how there is a document that CFRG is not going to adopt. So it's just floating out as an individual ID. And if TLS, this is X-Wing, and if TLS would like to use it in one of its parts, the encrypted client hello part, which uses HBKE, which wants a new chem, they could just get a code point for it and use it. And Martin said, well, it's not adopted, it's subject to change, so we're not likely to use it because it's going to change out from under us. And so Paul's comment of registering them with document names and versions may help with that a little bit. And then to Nick's point of limiting registrations in IANA to primitives of certain categories, cryptographic primitives, may help with what this is trying to achieve. But I want to underline what some other people have said, that cryptography is floating all over the place in IETF. And just because it's not in a primitive shaped box doesn't mean that we're not doing cryptography in places besides CFRG and TLS and a couple of other places. So yes, clarifying what kind of expert review is expected all over the place that is being touched by cryptography is important. TLS 1.3 got a lot of expert review several years ago. It continues to change in TLS working group. We're trying to get more processes based on TLS working group consensus to make sure we get ongoing further review as TLS 1.3, as documented in all of our documents, continues to change, and that none of the security guarantees that were provided back in the day by security analysis by academic experts of the protocol remain a guarantee as we change the protocol. Thank you.
Are you replying to that, Martin? I mean, you're in the queue. I'll leave you where you are, but.
It was just a reply.
Yeah,
I said that personally, we'd find it difficult to deploy something that's off a draft at any given scale for this sort of thing, particularly when we're talking about sticking records in DNS, but we can.
Right. So that there on the thing that says, why do you need an RFC? One of them is because a vendor won't implement it unless it is an RFC, right? We've run into this a lot of times.
Which is a bit of a silly idea, but you know,
well,
we have reasons for it.
It is, you do.
Yeah.
You absolutely have reasons for it, and it's okay.
Oh, and to put the point on the first major bullet, X-Wing has been published in a cryptographic journal. It has been reviewed. So if it meets some of these requirements, maybe we can bypass the CFRG and get a crypto RFC for it because it meets sub-bullet right there and make everybody happy.
So that's going to get you a code point. But you already have a code point, right?
We don't.
But you could.
Right, but limit publication of crypto RFCs to vetted by public cryptography outside of the IETF. Why can't we get an RFC?
Well, you can go to TLS and ask them if they'll make an RFC for you. No. Yeah. Really? Okay. Dan.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm really glad Watson brought up that point about the sub-bullets here, but I'm concerned that it looks like there's disagreement on the dice there, whether this is and or or.
Have you met us?
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to caution against that being an and, because this is going to create like a cryptocracy that will rule on what can be done. And, you know, we saw
I mean, it
this
gives
week.
CFRG right of refusal, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So, you know, we saw in TLS that, you know, the FAT is blocking advancement of a draft, or it looks like it is, and that's causing some issues. If we were to do something like that with the CFRG, I think it would really be problems. Do you want to?
I'm just going to, the reason these are bullet points and not a draft is because we're not even anywhere close to formalizing all of this text, right? These are just like things we kind of want to wade into and bring up for discussion. This is purely discussion for everyone. Nothing is set in stone. The security ADs have no opinion. We're looking for all of your input.
Okay. I just want to say that a very useful thing to do is, you know, and I've done this. I read a crypto paper and I thought this is really cool. I really want this, but I can't use this in a protocol because I can't refer to some random crypto paper written by cryptographers. No one's gonna be able to implement that. So I wrote an internet draft and I got AD sponsored, and now it's referenceable. And you know, people referred to it in CFRG today. They were like, somebody came up with ad hoc deterministic AEAD, And they said, well, why don't you use AES SIV? It's 5297. Well, gee, where did 5297 come from? It was an 80 sponsored. And if you get rid of that step to get a crypto RFC, I think it's going to really do damage to the community.
So again, we're not fully removing AD sponsored. We're not committing future security ADs to what they want to AD sponsor or not. We're just trying to set a general policy, and there will always be exceptions for good things.
Hi, Stephen Farrell. That last point was something I wanted to bring up, is that I think you should explicitly say that there will be exceptions, because there's always going to be something that kind of falls in the cracks of whatever you write down. And letting the ADs or the IRTF chair or whatever push things out, or the independent submissions editor push things out that don't match this policy is going to be required at some point if we want to get the right answer quicker and not get stuck in loops kind of redefining policies. So that's one point. I think you have to explicitly note that whatever this says, there's going to be exceptions. I agree with the points about the kind of in-between fancy crypto. That's kind of hard to tell if it should or shouldn't be covered by this kind of policy. So VDAFs and so on. I don't know how you handle that. Maybe you can, as Nick suggests, say, signatures, this applies. Block ciphers, this applies. But then it gets to a long list, I don't know. And last point, I don't know how you're going to get more specific about vetted by public cryptographic communities. I'm sure
That's why it's written that way.
Yes. Well,
You got better words. We'll take them.
I think no matter what way you try and write that down, it's good. But I'm not clear. I don't understand what it was you meant by those words.
Well, I mean, I can't say NIST competition, can we? I mean, there's more, right? But the question is, where are they and what are they called? And can I list them?
What was the password competition? What was the password hashing competition? Would that count?
Yeah, right. But they're all run by different people, different things, right? You can't, how are you gonna write this down?
Does a government count as a public community?
Yep, that's a good question, right? I mean, what about NESI?
I'm not looking for the answers now.
What about NESI competitions? What about, there's all sorts of stuff, right?
Yeah. So, I mean,
there's no way to pin this down that I know of.
I'm not looking for a way to pin it down right now. I'm just saying that there's ambiguity there.
There is. Absolutely.
And some of the possible ways of interpreting that ambiguity might not be what we want.
In a way, what it's meant there is that it's like the opposite point is clear, right? Someone comes with a black box and tells us, please publish this as an RFC, and nobody's ever heard of it. That's
easy though, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, but no, because it's currently it's all informal, right? We cannot point anywhere and say this is why we're not AD sponsoring you. It all starts to look very subjective to the people that come to us. And what we're trying to do is just make this more objective, more transparent, and more consistent.
I understand. I just think that there's a kind of a big rat hole there behind vetted by.
Is that right?
Is that you?
Right. Hi. It's Peter Liu. So here my question is, right now, because China is designing its own, post-quantum crypto, can you explain in very simple and clear terms, what are the procedures or reviews or endorsements, that the China design PQCs could take to make sure it will be treated equally, as compared to other national cryptos?
Yeah. So I think this is going to be a conversation for today and tomorrow. I think you're going to want to come to tomorrow's IS Open to see what Elliot has to say about possible publication of national crypto. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely right. National crypto is a big topic, and it really is. And with PQ coming, it's now an enormous topic. So we will talk about this tomorrow. I don't want to have that conversation here now, though. So please come tomorrow. I'd ask anybody who's interested. The ICE is independent, but not intending to be isolated. So although it sounds isolated, anyway, the point being, the more people who can show up tomorrow and give me the advice, or if you can't, email me and give me your thoughts as to what you think the ICE approach should be. I'm totally into that, and I'd really love to hear from you. If I'm, Paul, you want to?
Sure. Let me just, because we're sort of still on the previous mic entry, and we're over time, so I'll give you the last slot. Don't worry. I just wanted to say, like, whether it was you or someone from NIST standing there or someone from Russia standing there, the thing is, I do not have a consistent pattern I can follow. I do not have the procedure to answer that, and that's exactly the problem I'm trying to solve.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, if we can have like very precise like procedures, like maybe number one, we can have some open competition. Number two, we can have some publication. That procedure is not very clear to us. Maybe we can help contributing in making this more fair and publicized. And if we can have like clear procedures 1 to 5, that would be awesome. We're happy to contribute to the process.
Thanks. And in an ideal world, we would be able to write a really short document like that, but I'm afraid that would be, if it was that simple that we could just write a 5 bullet point document, we'd already written it, right? The problem is more complicated.
Okay. We're happy to contribute.
Thank you.
Right. So thank you, area directors, for having this discussion. I thought it was really good, and just as an individual, not as ICE, just me, Elliot. What I heard in terms of the feedback, by the way, was a wonderful set of GitHub issues, right? That could be, resolved one by one. I think you're on the right track, as they would say in reviews, right? And I really like this as a good start. The one thing, what I really am looking for is exactly, Deb, what you said, which is, as an individual, we don't want to be country specific in any way in terms of making decisions. Like, just because NIST did it, right? There should be ways to replicate whatever approach. What we should see what characterizations we can use for defining that external, vetted by community crypto community outside. So I think that's all really good, and I look forward to the next steps. And I think this has been really good. Thank you.
All right, that's it. You're free to go.